I'm joined now by one of the congressmen who was inside the chamber for that address, Congressman Andy Barr, Republican from Kentucky. Thanks indeed for joining us.
Good to be with you.
We heard the Prime Minister there really solidify the relationship between Israel and the US, saying at one point, our enemies are your enemies, our fight is your fight, our victory is your victory. What did you make of what he said?
Well, he's exactly right, and a very powerful line, and he emphasized that line by saying if you take away one thing from this speech, that is it, that our enemies are your enemies. And of course it's true, because Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, backed by Iran, they chant not only death to Israel, they chant death to America, and they threaten America. And so when Israel fights for a demilitarized, de-radicalized Gaza, they fight to defeat Islamic terrorists who would potentially fight against the United Kingdom, the United States, the West.
Now, there is a right to free speech in this country, a right to protest, but Prime Minister Netanyahu, speaking about those protesters, said they should be ashamed of themselves and called them at one point Iran's useful idiots about those American citizens protesting. What do you say to that?
Look, I agree with you that, of course, these people have a right to free speech, but I don't think these people are well educated. I think they're ignorant of the facts. And I agree with Prime Minister Netanyahu when he says that those protesters are standing, whether they know it or not, they're standing with evil. They're standing on the side of murderers and rapists and invaders.
Well, they say they're standing on the side of the Palestinian people who, as we see on our TV screens, are suffering a terrible humanitarian situation.
So here's what I would say, and I think the Prime Minister said this well also. The primary enemy of the Palestinian people is Hamas. It's the Iranian regime which is supporting terrorists that have given the Palestinian people hopelessness. Gaza is run by a group of bloodthirsty terrorists, and the ultimate victims are not just innocent innocent Israelis on October 7th. They're the innocent Palestinian people who live in a dark, terrorist-run city. And so, and Gaza is the ultimate example of the two-state solution. Is this what we want? Is the two-state solution what we want, really? When we've tried it, when Israel exits an area, Hamas moves in, that is the ultimate test of the two-state, and it's been a disaster, not for the Israeli people, for the Palestinians.
I just want to ask you briefly, Congressman, about the protests that are taking place outside the complex here today. We've seen an American flag burned, we've seen things turn violent. Obviously, people feel very strongly about this issue, but what would you say to them?
Well, it's really shameful that they don't understand that they're standing on the side of murderers and rapists and the evil. Why on earth would anyone in a civilized country in the West be supportive of radical Islamic terrorism?
But again, they're here saying, it's about the humanitarian cause and they can't watch what's happening to the Palestinian people.
Well, look, we all care about the innocent Palestinian people, and that's why I support Israel, because Israel has been the primary beneficiary of innocent civilians. And the Prime Minister went through in detail about how the Israeli Defense Forces have gone to great lengths to avoid civilian casualties, and yet those civilian casualties that have happened are the fault of Hamas. They've used these innocent people, women and children, Palestinian women and children, as human shields. And again, underscoring the evil that we're dealing with here.
Well, that point, of course, is disputed by the International Criminal Court, but we'll have to leave it there for the moment. Congressman Andy Barr from Kentucky, thanks so much for being with us here on BBC News. Well, we'll keep you up to date in terms of what happens with those protests here, but for now, back over to you, Christian.